This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Hey, what's up? And welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into. First one comes from Araya, who says, Q, you don't think that the Fowler and McDaniels news isn't more than just Barry smoke? Had a whole segment about not trusting news from the inside a week or so ago. I don't really know what to make of the McDaniels thing. Here's what I will say, right? Whenever you hear a report, it does have to pass a filter of like, hey, does this make sense on what you would assume the process would be? And if you're assuming that Kevin's being fired for the lack of progress on the offensive side of the ball, then somebody like McDaniels does make sense to at least consider. So, yeah, I think that that's something that could be there. Also, the thing with Jeremy Fowler is if you're looking for somebody who's been a rock solid, reliable reporter about what Andrew Berry does or does not do, Jeremy Fowler's probably the guy to go to. Again, I'm not just saying this because of the reports. I have literally witnessed their relationship. Like I see them at the Senior Bowl talking to each other all the time. I see them, whenever Fowler's in town for ESPN during training camp. I've caught it a couple of times where it's like, oh yeah, him and Barry are having conversations. So if it's coming from Fowler, he is a pretty well-sourced guy. He's not just going to put stuff out there. And if he thinks that it's a possibility, it's also him using his math on what he thinks Andrew Berry knows there, right? It's not just me saying, oh, well, Fowler said it, I believe it blindly. It's more or less me taking account of what I know about Andrew Berry and Jeremy Fowler's relationship, the connection that Fowler has to the Cleveland Browns, which I can verify is there, and Jeremy Fowler's track record versus also is what he's saying makes sense, right? Does it track with what we know about the Cleveland Browns stuff? All of those things lead up to a pie that makes it plausible. I don't think it's likely. I don't think they're going to hire Josh McDaniels or anything like that. And I made that very clear in the video where I'm like, I don't think that they actually end up going there because there's just enough to be concerned about. But I can understand why, if this is why you're firing Kevin, you would inquire about McDaniels. Because he could potentially be part of the solution, whether he's the head coach here or an offensive advisor for the next regime that comes in, right? Like there's more than one way to look at that McDaniels news, but I do think he's a person of interest in the search, and it kind of makes sense. Like I think him being somebody you look at makes sense. Again, doesn't mean he's head coach, right? He could be an advisor like Bill Musgrave was for a very long time. He could be your offensive coordinator for a defensive-minded head coach or something like that. Or you bring in a CEO type, right, who brings in McDaniels to run the offense. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like I think pairing McDaniels with a CEO type head coach would actually be really good because you got a filter for McDaniels, right? Like there's a name that I'm not going to say out here that I think would make some sense with McDaniels that I don't think a lot of people have really considered. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways it could play out. So I would just, whenever you hear these names pop up, just don't just assume that the only endpoint for that journey is head coach, right? There's other endpoints for that journey. We're going to get to this question from Timothy Cooper, but real quick, let me thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper.
All right, Timothy Cooper with the question. Depending on who comes out first draft, there might be few quarterbacks that are good in the second round. So if we get a number one wide receiver and a lineman in the first round, what do you think? There is nothing that makes my stomach turn like the proposition of the Browns drafting another quarterback in the late first round, the early second, or the third round. It feels like doing the same thing that the Browns have done, right? Like drafting a quarterback in the top 5. This team has only taken a serious swing at quarterback in the most common place to find a franchise quarterback, which is the top 5 of the NFL draft. They've only done it twice since coming back in from 1999, right? That's not doing the same old shit. Drafting a quarterback in the second round or the first round at the end of the first round and hoping it works out, that's textbook. Same old shit. It is the same game plan that led to Brandon Whedon, led to Johnny Manziel, led to Brady Quinn, led to Deshaun Kaiser. May I stop there, right? It's textbook. Browns doing the same thing over and over again. And very often when you're drafting a quarterback in the late part of the first round, and this isn't every case, right? There has been success stories at the end of the first round. Lamar Jackson, probably the biggest, but there have been success stories about drafting quarterbacks at the back end of the first round. So I'm not saying it's 100% the case that this is going to happen, but most of the time when you're taking a quarterback at the back end of the first round, it's because you feel like you have to take a quarterback. And when that's the case, you're probably reaching, right, for a prospect that really doesn't belong in the first round. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the late first round quarterback or the early second round quarterback this year. One, I don't think the prospects are going to match up with that. And two, I've seen the Browns go down that road before. I've seen every possible version of going down that road. And I know just how narrow that road is to be successful. Because again, the only time we're talking about that being a successful strategy is when we're talking about quarterbacks who are overlooked for reasons that really don't have much to do about what they did on the football. Like Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy, and he was drafted at the end of the first round because people were convinced he didn't know how to throw a football. And the same thing is true with Jalen Hurts, right? There's no outlier like that in this year's class where they would fall because people don't know what to do with them at prospects. You know, that's usually the times where it works out. But when you're just like taking prospects that people normally know how to evaluate and they're ending up at that late first, early second position, it's usually not a good thing. So yeah, I would be completely out on that idea. But thank you for the question, Tim. Wallahi says this: what have you seen, if anything, out of someone like Malik Willis out of the few snaps he's had with the Packers? Could you see him as a possible solution this offseason? I think for cap reasons, going for a rookie quarterback would be better for the team's construction than to spend at other places. Well, I mean, like, it don't really matter how much you spending if you don't got a quarterback, if I'm being honest with you, because you're not going to be competitive enough for your salaries and for your cap situation to really matter. Like, you got to get to a baseline of competition first before we can really talk about how much does the salary cap matter, which is why quarterbacks continue to get overpaid. That being said, like, I'll be lying to you if I said I watched a ton of Malik Willis. I'm sure I'll catch up before we get to free agency because there's not a lot of games left that you can watch of Malik Willis. So I'll catch up, do a breakdown on him eventually, talk about what I like about him, talk about what I don't. Can't say that I'm informed about him enough to have a serious opinion right now. So I don't know if he's a possible solution in the offseason. I will say this, though. It will be interesting to see what the Browns' appetite is to bring in salary at the quarterback position. Last year, the Browns weren't interested in like a Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold or even like a Russell Wilson because they viewed the salary of those players as prohibitive. I wonder what kind of situation they're going to find themselves in this year as far as what their salary demands are for a quarterback. Last year it made sense. You got Deshaun kind of sitting on the roster without any kind of cap insurance to kind of soften the blow. So you just want to be as cheap as possible at quarterback. This next year, I don't know what that mindset is going to be. Will they be willing to spend money at quarterback? Will they won't? I think that's a big, big question mark for the Cleveland Browns this offseason that we'll see if it gets solved, because last year, a lot of what motivated the decisions they made was the fact that every quarterback they brought in was extremely cheap, and they were trying to keep that room as cheap as possible. We'll see if that changes this year. Cam McBird asks this. Do you think the Browns' history with quarterbacks being acquired by trade, looking at you, Deshaun, would affect their decision to possibly trade up for a quarterback in this year's draft class for either Moore or Mendoza? I think this is an acceptable thing to make fans nervous, but it's an unacceptable thing to stop the Browns from making a decision on quarterback. If you don't want to trade up for Mendoza or Moore because you don't think they're that good, okay. I disagree, but I can live with that decision if that's what motivates it. If you're telling me you don't want to pull the trigger on Mendoza or Moore and you're the Cleveland Browns front office and you're not doing it because, the Deshaun trade didn't work out, then you deserve to be fired, because now you're just making scary decisions, right? You're making decisions scared to fuck up, and you're never going to be good at your job when you're operating like that. So, while I can understand fans feeling this way, and I wouldn't judge a fan for feeling this way, this could not be the mindset of the Cleveland Browns front office. They can't be sitting here with cold feet because they traded for Deshaun when Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza are completely different than Deshaun Watson. That's not really an acceptable reason to not make that decision. If that's what motivates it, then this situation's terrible and everybody needs to be fired. Like, that can't motivate the decision. Darrell says this: why don't we consider the possibility that Kevin can't reinvent himself here and fix the offense, or humble enough to hire an innovative mind that can do what he can't and be a CEO, like he said, a leader of men? The problem is that Kevin has had the opportunity to do this for 2 years and he is not. So if you bring him back for a third year, what is the reason to believe that that's going to happen? He had the opportunity to turn himself into a CEO after he fired Ken Dorsey. He hired Tommy Rees, who he was insistent that he would call the plays over and he would design the offense with, and it led him here. Is it possible he can change or reinvent himself? Sure. It's possible I can grow wings and learn to fucking fly too. But you can't bet the farm on that possibility if you haven't seen realistic reasons to believe that Kevin is willing and can do that. And where's the evidence of that over the last couple of years? Where's the evidence that he's going to become a CEO type and sit in the middle here and not try to have his fingerprints over the offense? Even while he's not calling the play, his fingerprints are all over this offense still. Again, we're asking Kevin Stefanski to become somebody he did not sign up to be, and he was not hired to be, and he was not told to be. Kevin was hired here to be an offensive genius. He is going to do the job assuming that his offensive knowledge is part of why he's here. And he's going to make decisions based on that. This is what the status quo of this relationship is. You could try to change it, but there's really no indication that he'd be receptive to that, So, I just don't see this being a really strong possibility. You know what I mean? Riley says this: can you realistically make a case for the Raiders not taking a quarterback number 1 overall? And would you be happier seeing Mendoza or Moore fall to us whatever picks we get traded up for. I would be happy with either Mendoza or Moore if we're able to get to him, or if we traded up for one of those two. I'll be happy with them. At this point, I lean towards Mendoza because, like, just week after week, we see this guy get bigger challenge after bigger challenge and just answer the challenges in front of him at even a higher rate than like a Dante Moore has, who I think is tremendous. But like Mendoza is just, he's doing the special stuff at the quarterback position. So yeah, I would, if the Browns had the choice of both quarterbacks, I would definitely go Mendoza over Moore at this point. I don't know if that's what the Browns would do, but it's what I would do. Can I realistically make the case for the Raiders not taking a quarterback at number 1 overall? Logically speaking, if I'm relying on the Raiders to act logically, there's no reason they shouldn't take Mendoza number 1 overall. I'd be shocked if they decided not to do it. The only thing that can give you hope is that it's the Raiders, and there's never been a more illogical franchise in the draft than the Raiders, right? This is a franchise that is notorious for making very, very strange draft decisions. But to be fair to the Raiders, the driving force behind that, Al Davis, is not there anymore. So it's not like they have that cult of personality to inspire that kind of weirdness. I try to assume that teams are going to act logically, even if I don't have much respect for who's running the show. I have to assume the Raiders are going to act logically. And it would just be very, very logically sound to take Mendoza here at number 1 overall for them. I don't see a way that they talk themselves out of it. I hope that that's true. I hope that they talk themselves out of it and overthink it. But I really just don't see a reason for them to do that. Maybe they can talk themselves into more over Mendoza, which I think is possible. But the idea of them like talking themselves out of Mendoza and more completely, maybe somebody can trade a veteran to him. Like, if that happens, then yeah, obviously all doors are open. If like they trade for Kyler Murray or something crazy like that. But I doubt that that's what they want to do. Paul Billups says Malik Willis, Mendoza, or Moore. Sorry about that. What are the pros and cons of each one? Rank them from best to worst option. I think Mendoza's probably my favorite option. The pros of Mendoza, very accurate, strong arm, in my opinion. I think a strong enough arm in the NFL. You won't really question his arm strength in the NFL. He's not going to have like the strongest arm in the league, but he won't have questionable arm strength. Big bodied, he can move better than people anticipate. He's not really a play extender, but I do think he'll be a solid scrambler at the next level. And somebody who has showed the propensity to play his best football when his football team needs it the most, which I think is one of the most important qualities for a quarterback, right? A quarterback can have all the tools they want. They can be capable of making all the tight window throws. But if they're not good in the fourth quarter, if they're not good in gotta have it situations, then they're not quarterbacks that you take seriously. Like, think about it like this. Joe Burrow is not as talented as Lamar Jackson. But there's a lot of people who take Joe Burrow more seriously than Lamar Jackson, because in gotta have it situations, Joe Burrow's track record is much better than Lamar Jackson's, especially in the biggest moments. Joe Burrow, talent-wise, is not that much more talented from a physical standpoint than like a Jared Goff, right? Or Matt Ryan or somebody like that. But what separates him from like a Jared Goff is that Jared Goff does not come through in the big moments, and Joe Burrow does. I mean, like, a perfect example of this phenomena would be comparing like Sam Darnold's physical tool set to Joe Burrow's. Sam Darnold is much more talented than Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is not the most talented quarterback in the world when it comes to his physical tools. Obviously, he's very good at the position, which makes him talented, but he doesn't have the physical tools that Sam Darnold has. Hell, his lack of physical tools are why he didn't start over Dwayne Haskins or Justin Fields in college, despite proving himself to be a much better quarterback in the NFL than both of those guys. So, when you look at Mendoza's ability in those gotta have it situations, in those big game moments, that's something that matters a great deal to me. And when they need it, he provides it. And a guy who could deliver in those moments, that guy has the ability to go and exceed what his physical ceiling might be, right? There is a physical ceiling right now on Mendoza because he does not have Josh Allen's arm strength or Josh Allen's running ability or Lamar Jackson's running ability to go with his other skills. But if he can translate that ability in the fourth quarter that he has had in his career to the pro level, then that is what allows him to ascend into elite status. With Dante Moore, there's just not the same level of evidence there that he could be that fourth quarter difference maker. Not saying it's not possible for him. Certainly is. He's only 20 years old. He would probably be number 2. Who was the third one? Malik Willis. Malik Willis is a distant number 3. He is like a constellation prize to me. I know a lot of people are excited about Malik Willis's progression and what he's shown so far. It's been such like 70 dropbacks that people are excited about. It's not enough for me to take seriously at this point. It's enough to be like, yeah, if we need some competition, you can bring him in and hopefully he wins the job and proves to be good. But I'm not going to pay Malik Willis a ton of money and be like, yeah, we're going to solve it. We're going to feel good about it. I feel very nervous. Mendoza and Moore, I feel pretty comfortable with the idea of committing to them for the next couple of years. Dan is Human says, I've heard the idea from another Browns YouTuber, fire Kevin and Bubba, promote Jim Schwartz the head coach, keep Tommy as offensive coordinator, bring in a new DC and special teams coach. The idea behind this is he wanted continuity in the locker room for the continued development of the team. My question is, how likely is this to happen and how effective do you think this would be as a change? I don't really love that idea. I'm not a big fan of Jim Schwartz becoming the head coach of the team. I know there's a lot of folks who like that idea. I don't. I think it's for one simple reason. Again, why are you firing Kevin Stefanski in the first place? If you are firing Kevin Stefanski, there has to be a reason behind it. The reason that is plausible and justifiable is that you aren't happy with Kevin Stefanski's offense. You want Kevin's offense to evolve. It has not. So you're firing him with the hopes of finding somebody who can provide a solution to that. Hiring Jim Schwartz and keeping Tommy Rees as offensive coordinator does not provide that to me. It's basically the same thing as keeping Kevin Stefanski. And at that point, I think it's a worse version of keeping Kevin. If you're going to hire Jim Schwartz, you might as well keep fucking Kevin, right? That's kind of where I sit with this scenario. Like, Tommy Rees has done some good things as offensive coordinator, but a lot of the big problems that exist structurally with this offense still exist with Tommy as offensive coordinator, and nothing in his history makes me believe that that's going to change. You'll be switching up the defense a little bit, right? You'll be bringing in an underling for Jim Schwartz to work over. I just don't think that this solves the problem that the Browns are firing Kevin for. What this solves is, like, how do you maintain continuity while firing Kevin? But that's not the main issue here, right? Like, you'll have some continuity because you're not blowing up the whole building in Cleveland, right? You're just firing the head coach. But yeah, if you want to keep continuity this bad, you might as well just keep Kevin. But if you're willing to fire Kevin because you think that the problems on offense are drastic enough to have to do it, you can't keep his offensive coordinator, and then promote him. Like, that makes very little sense to me. Like, you gotta let Kevin, if you're gonna do that, you might as well just keep Kevin at that point. Darrell says, why is it assumed that only Shador could get better. I know the narrative is that Dylan Gabriel can't throw over 15 yards, but I think it's a Sanders narrative. Also, I feel Gabriel's game against the Steelers set him back. Some regression, 17 hits. He had an average time of 2.54 seconds to get the ball out. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I do think it's interesting that Dylan Gabriel's like being completely written off here. I get why Dylan's being written off because his sample of games weren't very impressive. And I thought by the time we got to the end of that sample, it was pretty clear that Dylan wasn't going to get better or learn anything by continuing to play. I do think that there's a possibility that Dylan Gabriel can be better than what he was in his rookie year. And I do think a lot of people have like kind of ignored that possibility. And because it's more convenient for people who want to draft a quarterback, which obviously Dylan Gabriel has not really been a factor in those conversations, or people who want to maintain Shedeur as the starting quarterback going into 2026. So, yeah, I think Gabriel's being discounted. I do think that it's possible that the Browns could hire somebody who would be interested in Dylan Gabriel and giving that a shot again. And that would be an interesting reaction that some of the fan base will have to that. But, yeah, it is interesting that, like, you know, we're hearing all the stuff about how you can't judge Shedeur about some of the stats that we're seeing in the games that he's played. But those narratives have been concrete about Dylan Gabriel's future. Now, I think that exists for more reasons than just Sanders fans having a narrative. I don't think it's just the Sanders people who feel that way about Dylan. But it is a interesting juxtaposition where it's like one rookie, we know what he is after 6 games. The other rookie, people are arguing after 6 games that you can't possibly know what anybody is in 6 games, which is interesting. Jay Engelman says this: I can't be the only one who's pissed off we beat the Steelers right. I hate rooting against my own team, but that's where we're at. If we're going to lose, if we lost that game, we'd be sitting at number 2 overall. Instead, it may cost us a second first rounder this year, as well as a first rounder next year to get high enough to get a quarterback in this draft. And that greatly inhibits our ability to get the caliber of player we would like to fill the holes on the offensive line and wide receiver room. Is it really as bad as it seems? Or do you think we can somehow manage to snag a wide receiver 1 if our second pick is in the second round? You know, my friend Sonny, I do the show AFC North Talk with, he was talking to me before about like, oh, he had this parlay that was going to hit for like $2,000, right? He was like a $5 parlay that he almost hit on that would have hit $2,000 on it. And me and him were talking about it. And he's like, it's really important to recognize that he did not lose $2,000. It's easy to feel like when you have something like that and you almost win $2,000 that you lost $2,000, but that's not what happened. He lost $5 because that's what he paid for the parlay, right? That's the same way I feel about like this whole draft pick thing. It's really easy to feel like because you beat the Steelers, you lost the second pick in the draft, because you could do the math easily and see the Browns didn't win that game, they would probably get the second pick in the draft. But the reality is you never had the second pick in the draft. So you did not lose the second pick in the draft. You won that game to Pittsburgh. And look, I don't know what the Browns could have done to try to lose that game more than what they did, right? Like, they played the game, they turned the ball over. Pittsburgh had plenty of opportunities to win that game. It's not like the Browns went out their way to try to win this game in the last minute to be spiteful. They just won the game because Pittsburgh was incapable of winning it. Straight up. Exactly what happened on Sunday. So like what I'm supposed to be pissed off about, you know, like, am I supposed to be pissed at the Browns for having the audacity to stand there as the Pittsburgh Steelers lose a game in front of them? Like, is the expectation there that the Browns intentionally leave guys open at the end of the game to blow it? Like, there was no honest way for the Cleveland Browns to play that game against Pittsburgh where they weren't going to win it. They did all the stuff in good faith that could have lost them that game, and Pittsburgh did not beat them. I don't know what else to think about it, you know? So again, it's kind of like that parlay. It's like, yeah, it's easy to feel like you missed out on $2,000, but whatever you wanted to happen to hit that parlay, it didn't fucking happen. So you didn't miss out on $2,000. You just lost $5. That's how I look at it. You know, but everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.